We got some NFL draft talk on today's episode of Miami Dolphins Today by Chat Sports. I am Nic Rohloff because the esteemed Dane Brugler from The Athletic dropped his second overall mock draft, first one since the season concluded. It was 2 rounds long, which means the Dolphins are making 2 selections, and I wanted to talk about who he had Miami taking and the 2 prospects as a whole on today's show. But this is why you subscribe to the channel, because we are the #1 spot for Miami Dolphins NFL draft content. News, rumors, mock drafts, we'll have it all. So hit that sub button and join the channel because we will have you covered all draft season. The Dolphins will be making 2 selections because as of right now, they have 2 picks on the first round and the second round. The first round pick being number 13 and the second round pick being number 48. So without further ado, let's get into who Brugler had the Dolphins taking with the 13th overall pick. It's an offensive lineman out of LSU, Will Campbell. This is a name that Dolphins fans should get familiar with in this pre-draft process. I'm a fan of him, but Brugler was very complimentary of this potential fit. Brugler said Campbell earned the starting left tackle job in Baton Rouge shortly after he arrived as an 18-year-old freshman. That only allowed 2 sacks in his 38 career starts. Some scouts see him as a tackle, while others believe he is a guard. But with potential shuffling to come on Miami's offensive line this offseason, Campbell could help in multiple spots. And that is something I rave about when it comes to Will Campbell. He can play almost every single position on the offensive line. If he needed to play left tackle, he could. He did it for 3 years at LSU. If he needed to shift over to a right tackle, I believe he could. Center's a question mark, but he could absolutely be a left guard or right guard in the NFL. I think he is a Swiss Army knife on that offensive line, which is why, to me, this would be a dream pick. I have talked a lot about Malachi Starks from Georgia as a potential fit for Miami. The safety to potentially play alongside Javon Holland or be his replacement. But the 2 prospects at this point in the draft process, that I want the most, Starks and Will Campbell. And when you talk more about the need for Miami at the offensive line spot, when you look at what the Dolphins have on their depth chart right now, it becomes abundantly clear. And this could even become more sketchy if Teron Armstead retires. Armstead or Patrick Paul will be your left tackle next year. Aaron Brewer slotted to come back as your center. Austin Jackson coming back as your right tackle. Andrew Meyer is on the roster as UDFA as that center spot, but Wynn's a free agent. Jones is a free agent. Eichenberg's a free agent. Kendall Lamb's a free agent. You need to fill a lot of spots on the depth as well as your starting left guard and right guard spots when you look at this offensive line. And that Swiss Army knife that is Will Campbell could be absolutely huge for Miami. And he did not have the best junior season. There's no debating that. He was actually much better as a sophomore and even almost as a freshman. You wonder why that is, but I don't think he has declined at all. He is still among the top offensive linemen in this draft class without a question, in my opinion. And we showed it earlier. Even though he was a left tackle at LSU for 3 straight years as an 18-year-old freshman getting that starting spot, many scouts and experts expect a potential shift for him to the offensive line on the interior end of it. And that's not an issue to me. I know interior offensive linemen aren't kind of valued as high as offensive tackles, and I do understand why that is. But for Miami needing an interior offensive lineman so bad at left guard or right guard, Will Campbell makes a lot of sense for me. And because of his versatility and ability to play on the outside at both tackle spots, that rises for me in terms of him as a prospect. I am someone who values versatility, not only on the football field, but in life, and Will Campbell, to me, provides that to the fullest extent. So what say you? Do you want the Dolphins to draft Will Campbell if he was available with the 13th overall pick? Type D for draft, type P for pass. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. As we look more in depth at Will Campbell as an NFL draft prospect, there's a lot of positives and there's a lot, and I wouldn't say a lot of negatives, but few negatives that I do want to showcase here. The positives are much more than the negatives, though. He is an excellent leader. We mentioned you know how well spoken, how well of a culture guy and a player you have to be an 18-year-old freshman starting in the SEC at left tackle? Well, he's also a great leader. He's a two-time captain for the LSU Tigers. He's a fluid athlete. I believe one of his strongest points of him is his ability to get to the second level. In the run game, he can double and chip inside and help on the double team blocks with an offensive guard, and then quickly get to that second level to get his hands on linebacker safeties. It's one of the things I like about him the most. And what I've seen other experts talk about, and a little bit when I'm watching the film as well, is that he's got really good weight distribution in terms of his balance. He can handle speed rushers. He can handle bull rushes. He has good leverage. I like what he brings to the table both in the pass game and in the run game. The couple negatives that I did want to bring up here, there's not many with Will Campbell, but there are some. Sometimes I saw Bleacher Report bring this up, and I actually agree, he oversets at times. When he's pass blocking as a left tackle, sometimes he just over drops back in isolation one-on-one settings, which provides the opposing defender a little bit more of a leeway to come inside on you or come with you with a bull rush. He's not going to be beaten often on the speed rush. He almost commits to the speed rush, which leaves him vulnerable to the inside moves and the bull rushes. But like I mentioned, he's got such good weight distribution and anchor where he doesn't get beat as much as a different prospect would if they had that same issue. And then the negatives, or another one, arm length. I mean, that's why he might be moving inside to the offensive line at left guard or right guard, right? It's because his arm length isn't as late. He can't get those paws on you early, which leaves him vulnerable to a cross drop move. There's not a lot, and we're nitpicking here, but that's what happens when you start to scout some of the top guys in this draft, whether it's at any position. You nitpick things because not every person is a perfect prospect. No one is a perfect prospect. But here's this. I want him bad. I do. When you're talking about a player that fits exactly what Miami needs, I think Will Campbell is that to a T. He would be an excellent addition to the locker room, be an excellent addition to this team in terms of just performing on the field. I love Will Campbell. I want him bad. And we'll round out his talk and get to the second round pick in just a second. But we are sponsored by Game Time. Game Time is the #1 ticketing app out there. And if you want to go to a live event in your local area, whether it's Miami, whether it's Albuquerque, New Mexico, Game Time is the place to get your tickets. They have Game Time picks as a cool feature, which filters out the fluff to show you incredible deals on great seats so you don't waste time searching through thousands of tickets. They also get you a full panoramic view in the app of your seat before you buy. They make purchasing your tickets so easy, which is why I love using Game Time. And you can get $20 off your first purchase when you sign up, create an account, and use code CHATSPORTS. Terms apply, first purchase only, but use code CHATSPORTS to get $20 off your first purchase. Game Time, I use them to get my tickets to go to basketball games, to football games, to comedy shows. Like I said, they have all the tickets you need if there is a live event in your area. So get started today. The link is in the description and comments of today's show. What time is it? Oh, well, it is game time. All right, finalizing the conversation on Will Campbell. He is my #1 graded offensive lineman. And this is just overall offensive lineman. This includes potential interior offensive linemen and offensive tackles as well. Maybe you can put Tyler Booker in here, the guard from Alabama. But when I'm starting to look at these guys in the offensive lineman department, I think Will Campbell's my #1. Kelvin Banks Jr. from Texas, another offensive tackle that may shift inside, is #2. The #1, maybe just pure offensive tackle, Josh Simmons here at #3. Then you got Wyatt Malum from West Virginia, Armand Membu, and then, like I said, probably Tyler Booker coming in here at #6, maybe, potentially. I'm high on Membu right now. I've been on him for a while. I like his versatility, potentially playing inside and outside like a Will Campbell. Wyatt Milum is one of those kind of standard offensive tackles. I'm not knocking Tyler Booker, but this is just more or less me showing you how high I have Will Campbell on my list, and if he was available with pick 13, I think there would be an absolute home run for the Miami Dolphins. So let's get into the second round pick for Miami in this mock draft. And they actually go tight end, Harold Fannin Jr., the tight end from Bowling Green. And boy, I was not familiar with his game, but after reading the article, looking at his stats and watching some of his film, this guy is an absolute machine. It is ridiculous how productive he was for Bowling Green in the MAC. Low level, not as high level competition as other tight ends like Colson Loveland, Tyler Warren, and some other guys from Helm, too, from Texas. But Fannin, unbelievable production. I mean, he was the number one targeted tight end this past year, the number one tight end in terms of receptions, number one in terms of yards as a tight end, and number one in touchdowns. He is a monster. I mean, it's hard to fathom a tight end in the college game putting up numbers like this. And I show you these numbers on screen, and I just told you that he's number one in every category from 1, 2, 3, 4. That shouldn't surprise you. This guy was the number one target on his team, and it's someone that his quarterback can rely on in every single situation, including contested catch percentage, which is something I look at a tight end, because if you are going to make the commitment to a tight end in the top 2 rounds of this draft, they better be able to be a red zone threat, because that's something Jonnu Smith isn't the best at. He's more of a yards after catch tight end, and you need someone to help kind of alleviate the stress of you not being able to pass the ball as effectively inside the 5 to 10 yard line. Well, he had a 59.1 contested catch rate in 2024, 24th amongst all tight ends in college football. So it's not like he's top 5, top 10 like he is at everything else, but he's still a pretty solid guy in terms of going up and making a catch when there's a defender in the area also going up for that. He's 6'3", 6'4", 230 pounds, so he's a big guy, but not the most physical freak. For example, Tyler Warren from Penn State, around 260 pounds. So Fannin Jr. is much more of a kind of athletic tight end, vertical threat tight end, and not much of a bruiser. But the one thing that made me a little intrigued with potentially taking him in this draft and having him be an option for Miami is that he actually is pretty solid in the run game, which we know the tight ends for Miami have to be good at blocking, because Durham Smythe, Julian Hill, those two had roster spots all year long as the tight ends 2 and 3 in Miami because they could block. And I put in quotation marks because I don't think they were the best at it, but that was the idea of having them around. And Fannin Jr.'s block stats last season in the run game was actually pretty impressive. He was the 21st ranked tight end in run blocking total grade, 72.8. In the zone run blocking scheme, which Miami employs quite a bit, he was 76.0 graded, 19th, which is impressive. Not as good as a blocker and gap kind of schemes, but you see that he is at least an average to above average run blocker. None of these guys are going to be perfect in terms of blocking right away coming out of college. It's something that these coaches need to get on them and continue to improve on. But only one penalty is an optimistic point of view as well. Fannin Jr., the number one graded tight end overall from PFF, because of how good he was in terms of blocking, as well as being the leading receiver at the tight end possession at the collegiate level in both receptions, yards, touchdowns. He did it all for the Bowling Green Owls last season, and he is going to be probably drafted in the first 3 rounds. And the question is, will Miami ultimately target him? Well, Dane Brugler had him, and he's an intriguing prospect for sure. Before we close out today's show, I want to get this question in. Should the Dolphins draft a tight end early in this draft? I know a lot of people, like Chad Jones, actually want the Dolphins to potentially draft Tyler Warren, the Penn State tight end, clear-cut tight end 1 in this draft, 13th overall. But let me know, should the Dolphins draft a tight end in the first 2 rounds? Y for yes or N for no? I'm a fan of Fannin Jr. I really like him as a prospect, but I am not sold on drafting a tight end early in April due to other needs just being more important. I think tight end could be a position addressed in the 4th round, in the 5th round, hell, a couple picks in the 7th round if you want to make a pick at that position. And I understand why. Jonnu Smith is going to be entering the final year of his contract in 2025, and you don't really have a clear-cut future at the position. Durham Smythe and Tanner Connor, not it. Julian Hill, not it. Jonnu Smith, maybe you could re-sign him on a cheaper deal, but he's getting up there in age. So I understand trying to get a young guy in this room to lead that group in the future after Jonnu Smith. But when you have so many needs on interior offensive line, at the safety possession, interior defensive line, off-ball linebacker, cornerback depth, I think those positions could be more valued in this Dolphins team, not only this year, but of the future as well, than drafting a tight end. So to me, when you look at this mock draft, we didn't really talk about who the Dolphins could have passed up on in this mock draft, but I'll tell you this right now. The safety from Notre Dame, Xavier Watts, was still on the board on this Dane Brugler mock draft when Fannin Jr. got selected at 48. And I'm not saying that Watts is a better overall prospect than Fannin Jr., but just due to pure positional need, if you're going to go offensive line in round 1, I think safety becomes probably the number 1 position I would take in round 2 if the right player is available, and I think Watts from Notre Dame is that type of guy. So I would probably stay away from tight end in round 2 and round 1 as things are right now, but obviously we would know things might be different when we are talking in late April, because if the Dolphins re-sign Javon Holland and sign another experienced safety to be the safety 2, and you have Patrick Morris coming at number 3, well, maybe you don't need to draft a safety, but hey, that's how I feel at least this early in the offseason. That will do it for today's show. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you turn on those notifications. We're dropping 2 videos on a daily basis, also going live every Tuesday. We're your number 1 spot for draft content around the Dolphins, as well as free agency rumors, news, coaching searches. We'll have it all here at the channel, so hit that sub button and lock us in here at Dolphins Today.